I'm Kathy Holzworth. I'm the guest host today for Hey Listen. Today's topic is hearing dogs. We have two guests with us today, Farley Warshaw and Dr. Teena Wax. We also have their dogs with us. Farley's dog's name is Opal, and Teena's dog's name is Ro'ee. We'll be right back. Here we are. I would like to reintroduce our guests. This is Dr. Teena Wax, and she is a staff chairperson of Psychological Services at National Technical Institute for the Deaf. Also with us is Farley Warshaw. He is a career counselor at the National Technical Institute for the Deaf in the engineering department. And they also have their dogs with us here today. They're very quiet and relaxing. We have Ro'ee here. This is Teena's dog. And I wanted to ask you, Teena, how did you pick this name, Ro'ee? It's an unusual name.
It happens that Ro'ee is a Hebrew word which means guide, my guide. So I borrowed from the Hebrew language and gave that name to the dog.
Specifically for this dog?
And the name sign is Ro'ee because of her tail.
Oh, that's very nice. I'll have to remember that. And Farley? Opal is your dog's name. How did you pick that?
Well, really, Red Acre Farm, where I got the dog, has been training guide dogs, and they assigned the name Opal. I thought I'd stick with that name. It was pretty, Opal, and I've stayed with that name since I got her.
Do you mean that you can pick your own name for the dog, or does the Red Acre Farm pick it for you?
Well, no, they don't have to choose the name. They will assign a name for the trainer. So the trainer can communicate with the dog by using its name, and when they give the dog to an owner, that person's given the option of keeping that same name or perhaps changing it to another name. So the owner can make their own choice, as Teena did.
Before I ask more questions, I want to also ask the studio audience. There's been some confusion about the name, hearing dog, hearing ear dog. We're not quite sure how to label what this dog should be named. What do you suggest? Farley, do you have a suggestion?
Well, you know, new signs are coined, and the sign I use for a hearing dog is this, and I use the term hearing dog. Perhaps Other people have different signs or terminology. I really have no idea. I don't want to make a big political thing out of it. I'm comfortable with that term, and if the phone rings, the dog will let me know, and I'm comfortable with the term hearing dog. If people have a different sign, that's fine with me.
And Teena?
I can't decide which sign to use myself. I've seen hearing dog pointing to the ear, and I've seen listening dog. But for myself, I try to think of what the dog does. What does she do for me? What is her function? And I decided that her function is to warn me, to inform me of things that are going on. So that's my sign for hearing dog.
To resolve this problem, I would like to use hearing dog. Should I spell it, or should I use your... I guess I'll try to use your dog's names, and I'll use Ro'ee's sign name. Teena, how long have you had Ro'ee with you?
Since last May.
Since last May. And Farley?
Well, since September, during the fall.
Oh, okay. Is she certified?
Yes, she is certified.
Fully certified?
She was just certified in, I think, in October, around October.
Opal's not yet been certified. Actually, she should have been certified just before Christmas. But I was out of town for 5 weeks and decided to postpone that. And she was finally evaluated about 2 weeks ago, and I'm waiting to hear by mail. After she becomes certified, she'll have an orange collar, the same as Ro'ee has. She has just a regular leash right now.
And when you're waiting to get that certification?
Yes, so I don't want to predict. I'm just waiting daily to see what answer comes back in the mail, and I don't want to take a guess whether she will or won't be certified.
During my research, I noticed that in the American Humane Society has about 40 training centers, training programs in the United States to train hearing dogs, and I thought that was quite a few. I understand that your dogs were trained at the Red Acre Farm, at the Hearing Dog Center there in Stowe, Massachusetts. Would you mind explaining what their program is like? What are the specifics that happen in that program?
The program started with a deaf person wanting a dog and sending an application form, filling it out, and explaining why they wanted a dog, their preference, size, short hair, long hair, what they wanted the dog to do for them, and then after filling that out and proving that they were deaf, sending it off, the application was reviewed, an interview occurred. Someone was sent to my home when I was interviewed, or when I was asking, and asked me all kinds of questions. How do you live? What do you do? Where do you travel? Where do you work? What goes on in your home? What are your activities? In other words, about my life, how I live. And then they went back and discussed it and matched a dog with me, one that matches my lifestyle. So they trained the dog then for 6 months, depending on what I wanted. They trained all of the dogs for warnings. And then, other than that, I listed what other things I would want. The telephone, the door, a baby cry alarm, something in the kitchen, any different thing that would happen. So they trained the dog, I think, between 4 months and 6 months there. And then I personally went for 1 week when the dog was ready. I went to the farm for 1 week and stayed there in Massachusetts, met my dog, and worked with my dog there. Then they came to my home for 1 week with the dog in my house and stayed for 1 week and taught me how to train my own dog in my own home and in my office. Then they left. I stayed here for 3 months, and every 2 weeks I had an evaluator visit my home, look things over, and see how the dog and I were doing. Then after that occurred for several months, and then finally There were 6 or more evaluations, and I passed and was approved.
I missed, wait, did you say where your dog was from?
Most dog places find animals from the dog pound, city pound, or an animal rescue league, or other places where animals are left. They pick out animals, test them, and choose the ones that they want for training.
In Farley?
I'd like to add to that many people who apply for a dog might specify a particular breed. I want a German Shepherd or a Dachshund or some type of a breed. And, you know, you can't expect to find a particular breed from this city pound, especially if it's a breed of dog that's in high demand. So you can specify perhaps in some ways what type of dog you'd like, a dog that loves to play outside, or you can make some general specifications, whether you want a large dog or a pretty small dog. And as Teena was saying, whether it's long-haired or short-haired dog, they can certainly try and find a suitable match. But it's really hard to find a specific breed. Also, they don't have many dogs that are much larger than ours. They want to make sure there's no liability involved.
Oh, that's
and
true.
that no one will get hurt. They want a moderate-sized dog.
True.
You know, if the phone's ringing, for example, when I went to Red Acre Farms, Opal was the largest dog there.
Oh.
She was the largest dog available, and Ro'ee was the next largest dog. Most of them are really intermediate sized, and it's much
interesting.
easier that way for people.
To apply for a dog, can anyone apply for a dog?
Well, they have a different list of criteria or qualifications. And a person has to, the dog has to meet certain criteria, has to get along well with people, has to be a certain age, willing to help in the home.
Why is that?
Also, people can't be students. I'm sorry to say that. I know a lot of the NTID students might be disappointed, but it relates somewhat to where they live, and you need doorbells and different kinds of support devices. There's a lot of responsibility. The dog really becomes responsive to an individual, and if there's a lot of people in the family, a lot of different people trying to train them, the dog can get confused really easily. So there's a variety of criteria. They need to kind of do an evaluation and a screening and make sure if a person will work out well with the dog or not.
I want to add to that, one reason why they have the criteria is because more people ask than they have time, or than the farm or the places have time or dogs available. So, for example, in one place in Oregon, Western Oregon, in the West, I was turned down for my application because I was not deaf enough.
Oh, I see.
I'm profoundly deaf, but there were other people waiting ahead of me that should get a dog before me. So I went to the Red Acre Farm. They had more dogs available, and I could select a dog from there.
Oh, that's interesting. And what, do you have to specify, do you have to have specific things that the dog has to pass during a training? During the research that I did from the Red Acre Farm, they go to pounds to test dogs. They take a dog out and give them a test and train them after that. But 9 out of 10 dogs fail the test that Red Acre has for these dogs. And I want to hold your response to this question. There'll be more coming, so don't go away. We'll be right back. having a great discussion, and I'd like to get right to our point. Oh, I forgot what we were talking about.
I believe it was the criteria for the city pound and how they screen and select the dogs.
Yes.
The way it was explained to me was that it's not really easy to select a dog. They do some fairly intensive screening for the dog's ability to respond to sound. They need to be responsive to sound. I'm not sure how they test that, but that's one of their criteria. Also, they want a dog who's capable of learning quickly. And they want to make sure the dog isn't wild, if you will. Third criteria is the dog's background. Was the dog abused previously, or what kind of litter was it from? What type of family did it live with? They don't want a dog that, perhaps has some emotional problems. They want to find a dog with a nice temperament.
And Teena, you mentioned that age is part of the criteria. Can you start training a dog when they're very young? What is the specific age?
Most hearing dog places prefer to find a dog that is between 8 months and 14 months of age.
8 to 14.
Because, one, it's a good time to train the dog. At that age, they learn very quickly and progress quickly. And it's an appropriate investment of time and money. They want a dog that will live for many years, have many years of work, a working life.
And also, Teena, the cost of a dog, this training is, happened at the Red Acre. Did you have to pay for the training as well as paying for the dog?
Well, yes, it's $3,000 to train a dog.
Oh my
for each
goodness.
dog. Deaf people who apply don't have to pay if they can't afford it. Red Acre Farm will ask, how much can you pay? What I told them was, I can afford some. Then if they will go to other places and get money from other places like United Way, the Lions Club, and the National Association of the Deaf, and other places. Ask them for support if we or deaf people can't pay the $3,000.
That's interesting. Farley, what is the requirement? Farley maybe could answer for both of you. I wanted to know what the requirement was for how much commitment you have to have for the dog. Do you have to stay with the dog all the time, for example? Do you have to promise that you'll be with them a certain amount of hours? What is the length of time that you have to give to the dog each day?
People often ask me if Opal is a pet or a working dog, and really,
yes,
she's both. I mean, she is a dog, she's an animal, and animals have their natural way of behaving. There's just no way to avoid that. You're looking for a dog for a pet, fine, there's no additional training needed. But with the type of training invested in these dogs, they're both a pet and a working dog. Like, for example, right now, Opal is on duty, and she won't behave badly. She'll stay right there quietly. But at home, she's much more like a pet. She's free to roam and play. She loves to play.
Oh.
But as soon as the phone rings, she knows it's time to stop playing, and she's on duty again. It's time to go to work. And as soon as the situation's done where she's in that role of being on duty, she goes right back to playing again. Now, in terms of a commitment, there's a 24-hour commitment. But there's, a timeout during that time. She's been trained to be on call, on duty all the time, but
I don't just get her and then lay back.
I don't just get her and then, it's over.
I see.
Sometimes I might go a week and I won't have any visitors at all, so no one rings my doorbell. I'll have to arrange for someone to come over and ring the bell just to make sure that she stays sharp. And I have to feed her well so she stays healthy. And, in exchange, she works for me. I guess there's a reciprocal arrangement here. I'd never just leave her at home alone, and I don't like to leave her home alone all day. I'd never leave her for a 24-hour period. I've certainly got regular responsibilities and commitments to feed her and take care of her.
That's
Teena,
interesting.
would you add to that?
You have to make sure that you give added attention, time, love, and play with the dog. You can't work with the dog all the time. It's not all
True.
work. It's not fair. And it's boring for me. So I have to bond. I have to learn how to bond with the dog in many ways.
Yes, it makes sense to me, yeah. I was wondering about being awkward with a hearing dog going into a new house or new building. Are people awkward with how to behave with your dog? Or should we be friendly to your dog or just be very professional? How should people approach you?
Well, at my home, when she responds to answer the door, she strikes a characteristic pose. I know someone's there, and she knows when she's on duty and when she's off duty. When I tell her okay, she knows she can leave that stance at the door and then go play again. She knows when it's okay to play around or not, and she knows if a person's not comfortable with dogs. So she knows when she needs to be on duty. I might tell her stay, or she knows when she can relax and be a regular pet.
Do you speak vocally to say stay, or do you sign stay? Which do you use? Which mode of communication?
For me, both. I could react or respond by communicating with her and sign only, but if she doesn't see me, she'll overlook it. So I like her to get used to my voice, and I do use both. She's really accustomed to my voice now, and I've consistently used both for those sorts of reasons, whether I'm telling her to stay or lie down. If she ignores me when I'm using my voice, I will punish her.
Does that apply to you as well, Teena?
Yes, I want to add one thing that can be confusing. In my office, people don't know what to do. The rules are clear sometimes for a hearing dog and maybe a seeing eye dog. A seeing eye dog, clearly you cannot touch when you see the dog on duty. Walking with a blind person, for example, whatever. They're on duty all of the time, but a hearing dog is a little bit different. They're not on duty all the time. It's confusing to know when to touch the dog and when not to. In general, it's okay to touch the dog unless a sound happens. When a sound happens, that means leave the dog alone, whether it's at home or in my office. That means the dog has to stop and respond to me and remind me or tell me about the sound.
Okay, good. It seems that we have plenty of information here about your dogs. And right now I'd like to open it up for our studio audience for questions. Are you ready? Are there any questions here? Who would like to start? Okay.
Is there any information that you have where I could mail in and find out some information about the dogs?
Yes, well, it's not really an identification card, but you do need a certificate for a hearing dog, and you can get one. And it has a photo of the dog. I can show you one.
That's interesting.
And with this, I'm allowed to go into a whole variety of public places. Each state has its own laws, and there's some federal laws as well that would permit you to take a dog on airlines, on the trains, any sort of public transportation. Then each state has its own laws. They're pretty similar, and they have to allow you to take your dog into restaurants or public places, into malls or stores. If they don't allow you to, it's considered discrimination. So as long as you have an ID like this to prove it is a hearing dog, you can take the dog with you.
I would like to know where you get information and an address. And is there a mailing list? And can I get on a mailing list to get information?
Well, I found mine from Washington State. Monroe County Association for the Hearing Impaired is a place that you can contact. They have a phone book, a directory that is called soar high, and they have a listing of several places that you could call and ask for information about hearing dogs.
Oh, good. Thank you.
If you have your own pet at home, can you send them to a place like Red Acre Farm to be trained?
Farley?
I'm not sure about that. Maybe you'd have to get some sort of evaluation to make sure that your dog would fit. I mean, not all dogs are that skilled at responding to sound, and they'd have to meet the screening. I know that for Opal, she really obeys training well and learns really fast. And still it took a long time, perhaps 4-6 months, to train her to respond to sound and noises. And she is a quick learner.
I want to add, too, that different places have different policies. Red Acre Farm, I doubt if they accept other dogs from homes, but other places like Lockport, which is 1 hour from here, they have a policy that permits that. They will investigate your dog, question you about your dog, and then maybe accept it.
Okay.
I'm interested in buying a purebred dog to have that trained for me. Can I do that?
It depends on the place. Red Acre Farm, I doubt it. But maybe at Lockport, you could get a purebred.
But before we go on to another topic, I want you to explain why they've decided to become dog owners. Please stay tuned, and we'll discuss that in our next segment. During our break, I was just petting Ro'ee, and I just thought of a question that I wanted to know the answer to.
How many signs does she know?
How many signs does she know? I wanted to ask you.
Most dogs can be trained with 5 basic command signs. Sit, like that. Stay, like that. Come, like that. Or hearing dogs tend to be trained with that kind of a sign. clap. Sit down or down and heel like that to walk with me or walk with a person. So those 5 basic signs. Mine has learned a few others. For example, this one, which means stop. Or this one, which means okay, go ahead.
Oh. And is that normal to add sign vocabulary yourself to teach your dog?
Yes, it is okay to add, tricks, you might even call them.
Oh.
You can teach the dog a variety of tricks, perhaps give them a bone and put it on their nose. Don't let them eat it till you say okay. And when you say okay, they can grab it.
And what about rolling over?
Yeah, that'd be okay, you could. But what's important is that they function appropriately in public, that they're well behaved. Those kind of tricks are fine, but what's important is they have to stay on duty in public and obey and do what they need to do. One of the things Opal really enjoys is chasing a ball. I've got a ball and she really loves to run after that. When we're outside, if I tell her the sign out, she's just eager to go outside. So, there's a variety of signs they pick up.
I have one more question before I let the audience get to you again. All along you've been doing fine without a hearing dog, and now you've gotten this hearing dog. Now why is this, at this time, did you decide to get a dog? You haven't depended on one all along. We'll start with you, Teena.
I became bored with being an independent person, so I wanted to become a dependent person. No, that's not true.
Is that true?
The reason is I was raised with a cat. I grew up with a cat. I had 2 cats for a very long time, for 15 years. Both cats died. Both cats are dead now, so I was considering if I would get another cat or a different pet. I read about hearing dogs. I became fascinated. One reason that I decided to go ahead with a hearing dog, was because I wanted to bond with a friend also, someone to play with. I can bring the dog with me to work. I'm a single person. I don't want to leave the dog at home. I feel guilty. So I bring her to work with me, or I can bring her to work with me. That's why I got a hearing dog.
And Farley?
For me, I've always been fond of dogs and had dogs as I was growing up. As a pet, but with a pet, you're responsible for the pet, have to leave it at your home, and whether you have an apartment or a house, if you decide to go away, you need someone to take care of the dog. You probably need a fence to keep the dog, and then with your schedule, if you want to go traveling, it's really tough. With a hearing dog, I was thinking about getting a dog where I could have a pet, but also I'd be able to take the dog a variety of places.
Interesting.
There'd be no problem. And I don't have signal lights in my home.
Oh.
I don't have any sort of alarms. And I thought, instead of using those assistive listening devices, electronic devices, I can get a hearing dog, kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
All right, let's open it up. You have a question over here?
I know that you 2 bring your dog to work. And I'd like to know what your reasons are for that. Also, I understand that Gallaudet University has not permitted faculty and staff to bring their dogs into their offices. And I have mixed feelings about people bringing their dogs to work, honestly, and so I'm interested in hearing your reasons for doing that.
All right.
At Gallaudet, I did look into that last year to see what their policies were. For employees, they don't have a policy yet. For the students or anyone who's living on campus, they're not permitted to have hearing dogs. You're right. But guests are allowed to bring their dog to the college campus with them. When I was visiting there as a guest last year, I had no problem bringing my dog on campus. Now, as for why I bring my dog to NTID with me, in my office, I don't have a signal light for my telephone. Also, a lot of people do stop by to see me. There's no signal light for my office door. Now, we could install some sort of flashing light, I suppose, but I think that, might be a distraction sometimes. And every time my phone rang, there'd be a light going off. I don't know if I'm that comfortable with that, and I have the dog there, and the dog is available. It can serve that function for me. I realize it may turn some people off, but after they've seen the dog and how she behaves and the service she provides, it serves the same function as a signal light or another assistive listening device.
My reason, I'll explain one reason, and that's that I bring her to work with me so I don't have to leave her at home for 8 hours or 12 hours alone. Sometimes when I leave her at home, sometimes I do leave her at home, but not very often. Also, she works for me at work. I work nights often. I feel safe with her with me. I don't feel safe alone if people are going by the window or going by the door, if there are strange people at the door. So with her in my office, I feel safer. Some people don't understand why we have our dogs there and are resistant to it. But it depends. She needs to behave a certain way in the office, in the hallway. There are some problems with that, and I have to negotiate with people. I have to learn how to manage her during the day in my office. It's been smooth so far.
Okay. Another question over here.
How long does it take from the time that you order a dog to get one?
Yes.
That depends. It's really variable and depends on the individual and your own lifestyle, what kind of dog you'd prefer to have. They might have a dog right there, ready, and can be trained quickly, and in just a few weeks it might be available. When Teena got her dog, I think it was really quick.
Yes, in 2 months.
And I know another person who waited, it was over 4 months. They had to wait till they found an appropriate dog. They did find one at the city pound, and then that had to be trained. It took a while longer. For me, it was really quick. Opal had been assigned to a previous owner. She was trained, assigned to someone who brought her back, and she hadn't done that well when she'd finished her training. So they did some retraining. That was really quick, and she was ready to be reassigned.
We have another question over here.
Yeah, to back that up, my sister told me that one of her friends flew out to see the dog, and she had to pay $200 for each dog that she got. And so I'm wondering, do you have to pay for the flight, or...
Do you have a reply for that?
I drove to Red Acre Farm myself. I don't know what happens if you have to fly. Who pays for that? Farley, do you know?
Well, any hearing dogs can fly free if you're flying and bring your own hearing dog with you. Again, you'd have to have some sort of picture ID as I showed you, but when you get on the airplane, you don't have to pay for the dog.
I have a question about the certification process. I know when the dog is certified that the dog can join you on the flight free, but what about in the process before that certification?
Yeah, well, there is a special ID. It's kind of in process. It's a temporary certificate. You know that the dog is formally trained, will become certified. You know the ID I showed you for my dog? That means the dog is in training. And after they successfully complete that training, well, they are already trained. And that documents it. When you go in on an airplane or any sort of public transportation, the dog's treated the same as a fully certified dog. You don't have to pay.
Okay, yes, please.
I don't know how all of this works, but suppose a dog dies within 2 years, for example. Do they give you another dog in replacement?
Good question. I don't know the direct answer, but I suspect that, for example, being registered with Red Acre Farm, they know me, they know my preference, they know my lifestyle, they know what I do. Maybe it would be easy for them to find another dog for me. But how long it would take would depend on what kind of a dog was available, how many people are waiting, that sort of thing.
Yes, go ahead, Farley.
What I suspect is once you have a dog who's certified, It becomes your dog. It's no longer Red Acre Farms or anyone else's. And how you treat the dog, meaning if you decide to stop using that dog for a hearing dog, and maybe you move somewhere, move in with other people who have other devices, other types of alarms or lights. You might not need the dog as a hearing dog, but I think it's still your dog to keep. I don't think they can take it back or reclaim it. They'd probably be really disappointed and might have more stringent ways of checking out or evaluating potential owners after an experience like that. Perhaps some dog owners don't keep up on their end. I know one person who does have a hearing dog that they obtained from Red Acre Farms. They had the dog here in Rochester, and after a few years they kind of gave up on using the dog in any way for service or as a hearing dog, and it just became a pet. So I'm sure that's disappointing to the trainers.
Yes, I have another question about the certification. How long is that certification good for? Does it just last for a year and needs to be renewed annually? Do you have information about that?
My feeling is that it's basically an honor system. If you don't use the hearing dog, it's almost an abuse of the certificate you have. You know, taking it on planes with you. If you're not really using it in that capacity, that's my feeling, is it's an abuse.
I think that there's a follow-up check to see how you're doing, how life is going, to see what is happening with your dog. I want to add also that if you decide you don't want to keep the dog anymore, within, let's say within 2 years or 5 years, Red Acre Farm will ask you to send the dog, give the dog back, so they can place the dog with another family or another person. They will replace the dog maybe 2 or 3 times, but after the 3rd time, they will retire sort of the dog. Red Acre Farm has a long waiting list for people who are waiting for retirement dogs. That's what the dog would be used for. They're beautiful pets.
Oh.
Many people want those for their retirement. So that's what they were used for.
My goodness, time is running out quickly. We have one more segment to come. Don't worry, we'll have more time for more questions in just a minute. We'll be right back. We're really having an enjoyable time here today. All right, I'd like to open it up again to the audience.
This is my first time
This is the first time I've ever been to Hey Listen, and I've seen this program at on the TV, and I want to let you know I'm really in support of Dogs for the Deaf, and they're for fun, for love, to carry some responsibility, and they can be good with children too. My wife and I have a dog. But we did have a dog, but we couldn't keep him because I have an allergy problem, but I think this is great.
Why, thank you. Do we have another question?
I have a question for both of you. What do you do when, how do you deal with the idea that you may have a tax that you need to pay on your dog? And it seems that some flash alarm systems might be less costly than owning the dog. How do you respond to that?
It's a good question. Devices might cost $300-400, whether you're talking about TTYs or flashing lights for those. And it's tax deductions may work the same way. You can get a medical deductions. For the dog, you could have up to $600 deduction for food and vet bills. So I think it might work out the same. There's no real difference, but the expenses are tax deductible, and perhaps you don't have to pay the initial cost on those devices.
Okay, another question over here.
Yeah, you were talking about the ID card before that proved that you use this dog for hearing purposes, and I know you can you take them into malls and movies and airplanes, but I'm wondering why you'd want to.
For myself, I travel a lot on business. So when I'm in a hotel room, I'm afraid to be there alone. When I have a dog with me, she lets me know when someone's at the door or the phone rings. Because if I bring devices with me, I have to pack all of that up and carry it. Just bringing my dog with me helps me feel safe. Why the mall or movies? For practice in public places. I want her to become used to crowds of people. I want her to become used to different situations and to behave well. For example, here tonight, she's very well behaved. She's very comfortable. She knows how to behave.
As for me, I don't really bring her out in public all the time. I might go to the mall, talk about if I'm going to the mall for an hour or two, I'll just leave the dog at home. If I'm going to be gone for a long time, 5 hours or so, and think, maybe someone would need to take care of her, then I'd bring her with me, unless I'm going to drop her off at a friend's house and make arrangements in advance for a friend to take care of her. But, I'd have to get in touch with someone, and, perhaps some of my friends are allergic to dogs, or it just wouldn't work out. So it depends. If I can't find a place to keep her, then I'll bring her with me. For me, it's basically about 5 hours. If it's going to be over 5 hours, that's how I make the decision. I don't often bring her to places like restaurants with me. I leave her home most of the time if it's a short trip.
I'm still not entirely convinced that a hearing dog would be better than some sort of lighting device that may signal you. I've used those for many years, but suppose a dog would become ill and could not perform in their duties. Doesn't it seem that the lighting device would be more dependable? And I agree with you that it seems that it's a lot cheaper in the long run than to pay for food and pay for the upkeep of a dog. And also, a lighting device doesn't depend on my being there. I can be a lot more independent when I have some sort of alarm device.
Do you have a response, Farley?
Well, it's a similar situation. Suppose that electronic device breaks down. I haven't experienced where a dog gets sick frequently. I've had her 6 months so far. She hasn't been sick once. I don't know how many times Ro'ee might have taken ill.
Not at all.
Secondly, you talk about electronic devices, light devices. Where I work, in my workplace, they're not going to pay for a light for me. I'd have to pay for it myself out of my pocket. And if I'm going to have to do that, well, I'd just as soon spend the money on the dog. Third reason is I've always had dogs as pets. But it's problematic for me. If I had a dog for a pet, I'd have to leave it home or find someone to take care of it. So, to tell you the truth, it provides a nice chance for me to have a dog I can relate to as a pet, but also that can provide the same service, if you will, that listening devices would. And in the city pounds, there's dogs that are put to sleep every day. This way, we can get one of those dogs, provide a loving home for it, and the dog is useful also. So there's humanitarian
Oh,
reasons.
Kathy?
I'm wondering how old your dogs are.
My dog is 2 years old now. I want to add something more to what
Oh, sure.
the woman asked back here. The most important reason why people get hearing dogs is because they want a pet also. Rather than using devices. They want a dog to bond with, someone to have fun with. It's a wonderful friend for me, companion for me. It's really influenced my life, affected my life, because I open up more, having conversations with people. I'm more open with different people because she's an icebreaker. It makes it comfortable for me to talk with people or people to talk with me.
Farley, how old is your dog?
I don't know exactly, but I'd say about 3 years old. I'm not sure exactly because she was obtained from the pound.
In front of hearing people, are they bothered by your dog? Are they confused and thinking it's a guide dog for the blind?
Oh yeah, sometimes it's interesting. Being deaf takes a lot of energy educating other people about deafness. And this is just one more example of where I need to educate people. For example, I went on a flight to Washington, D.C. and then took the subway. And the dog was with me, and I got in an argument with a man, and a policeman asked me for my ID. And I thought I was blind. I told him I wasn't blind. I can't hear. So we were writing back and forth, and he had to call some other guy that worked for security for the subways, and we had to iron it out. But at the same time, he learned something, and now he's got a lot more awareness.
Right, that's good. Thank you. And we have another question here.
I was wondering if you could show us some of the things that your dogs can do and what kind of commands they know.
A quick response to that would be, no, I don't want to demonstrate now, because that's not the purpose for the dog. She's not a demonstration dog. Red Acres Farms does have some demonstration dogs they travel with. This is a working dog, and she's only on duty when there's a real need to be on duty. It's fine with me if she wanted to mill around and be a dog with folks, but not as a working dog. When she's expected to be working, she works, and I don't want to be punishing her if she's confused.
But the process of how to train a dog involves first educating the dog to bond with or to connect with sound, to hear what the phone is, and reinforcement is done with food. So the dog feels good every time she hears the telephone sound. Then teach her to jump. I have to teach her to jump on me. So this whole cycle has to occur. That she jumps on me, then runs to sound, and back through the cycle again. That's how she's trained.
Good.
Okay, these dogs have already been trained, but I'm wondering if you have insurance on them. So, for example, if they went into a public place and they were to bite someone, maybe that would pay for someone suing them.
To tell you the truth, I never even thought of it.
Oh
You
my
raise an
goodness, is this
excellent
something
point.
new that maybe you should learn
I'll
about?
have to look into that with my insurance agent.
Interesting.
Tina, have you thought
I
about
don't
the
know.
liability? Thank you for bringing that up.
Well, where can you order one of these type of dogs?
Tina?
We got our dogs from Red Acre Farm in Stowe, Massachusetts. But there are 25 different places around the country. Start looking yourself, use the phone book that I just described earlier. Soar High from Mackay, Monroe County
Okay.
Association for the Hearing Impaired.
I'd like to know how the dogs do with warning parents that their babies are crying, for example.
Well, we haven't trained our dog to respond to baby cries because we don't have infants. We don't have babies, but the dogs are trained to do that. And the way they do it is they use a tape recording
Interesting.
with a variety of sounds that babies make and place that near a crib. They place the recorder in a crib, and the dog is taught to go where a parent might be sleeping, wake up the parent, and then go back to the crib where the recording is of the baby crying.
And Teena, and Farley as well, I wanted to know if you would share a funny experience that you've had with Ro'ee, I want to get her name right, and Opal. Do you have some experiences you'd like to share?
A funny experience. Let me think. Well, one cute experience that happened.
Briefly, please.
Several people were in my house. The phone rang. She jumped from person to person and realized who was the right person and jumped to me to go and answer the phone.
And quickly, Farley.
Oh, I went on a plane recently, and I went in and got a front row seat. A person had also come in and sat there. They came up to me and handed me a card, and sure enough, it was a brailled card. I kind of smiled at them, and they didn't catch what was going on, so I took out a pen and wrote, "I'm not blind." They were a bit taken aback.
Oh my goodness, that sounds very funny. Thank you, it's been wonderful. We're finished now, and I've enjoyed very much you being here. Thank you very much, and good luck with your dogs. Many, many thanks. Thank you for coming to our show today. Hey, listen. And thank you to your dogs. They've been behaving so well all through the show. Thank you very much. They're very good.